Welcome to the Bucky Brooks Show. I am Bucky Brooks, and we are talking all things NFL and the NFL right now. On the calendar, we are in the middle of mandatory minicamp week. Most of the teams in the business are going to work. They have their mandatory 3-day minicamp. So this is the first time that media has an opportunity to really see this offseason work fully play out in front of them. Because we're in phase 3 of the offseason, that means we can see competitive drills, we can see team drills, 7-on-7, inside run periods, one-on-ones, all the things that really make a good practice. We can see this come out and put it on full display. And so now we're getting a better sense of how some of these battles, the intriguing battles that we've talked about, are playing out. Today, I want to spend time talking about 3 quarterback battles that everyone had a lot of interest in. We want to talk about the Minnesota Vikings, Kyler Murray versus JJ McCarthy. We want to talk about the Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson versus Shedeur Sanders. And then we want to wrap up with the Atlanta Falcons, where we're looking at Tua Tagovailoa and Michael Penix, even though Michael Penix is still nursing a torn ACL. The reason why we want to focus on those battles is because we talk about the NFL being a quarterback-driven league, and the only way to have a legitimate chance to not only make the playoffs, but to make a title run is to have a legitimate quarterback in place. And some would say a franchise quarterback in place who can play at a Pro Bowl level. Now, we'll get to that later on in terms of whether these guys are worthy of being Pro Bowl considerations. But the first battle between Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy has been the one that has really caught everybody's attention. When you listen to the conversation and the debates and all of the speculation that's coming out from Minneapolis, it is all about like these two guys going at it. One guy, the experienced vet, Kyler Murray, entering his 8th year, a guy who is very accomplished, given what he successfully enjoyed early in his tenure with the Arizona Cardinals. And then you have a very embattled incumbent in JJ McCarthy, who has only played 10 games at the NFL level. And even though in JJ McCarthy's case, you loved what he was able to do at Michigan, going 27-1, helping his team win a natty, being the QB1 for Jim Harbaugh, which we know is kind of a badge of honor, given the success that Harbaugh's had collegiately and professionally, the reclamation projects that he's taken on collegially and professionally, and just the pressure that was on JJ McCarthy to deliver a title to a team that was desperately looking for one. JJ McCarthy certainly was that guy that people were excited about in the draft class because, look, 10th overall pick, someone who was athletic, someone who had arm talent. He had arm talent that he showed delivered on third down. You liked all of those things. You liked his ability to run around and add to the running game as a guy that could either scramble and keep it, execute some simple zone read things and get out the back door, or just being able to kind of play and live in that improvisational playmaking world. That said, injuries early prevented him from even playing as a rookie, so he didn't get that. And then last season, he had 10 starts. He was 6-4. He was 6-4 in those starts, but he completed 57.6% of his passes, had over 1,600 passing yards, and 11-12 touchdown to interception ratio, which doesn't really stand out as a player that is on the rise. Doesn't mean that he can't eventually get to being on the rise, but it certainly put an albatross around the neck of a franchise that was a playoff-worthy team last season, just didn't get the quarterback play that they wanted. And it burned them up to see their former starting quarterback, Sam Darnold, go to Pacific Northwest and immediately have success that culminated in him being a Super Bowl champion. Well, when you look at what the Vikings did in the offseason, they signed Kyler Murray to a 1-year, like $3 million minimum deal because he still owed a ton of money from the Arizona Cardinals after not only being their number 1 overall pick, but being a 2-time Pro Bowler, being an offensive rookie of the year, being the first guy who was drafted in the first round in football and baseball that we've ever seen, and being someone who, as a Heisman Trophy winner, jumped into the league and had immediate success on the way to compiling over 20,000 pass yards, 121 pass touchdowns, 3,100 yards on the ground with 32 touchdowns. He is a guy who has put up big numbers and shown to be electric at times throughout his career. The problem that you have with Kyler Murray is in 2022, tore an ACL. Then he came back last season and he had a foot injury that prematurely cut his season short. You have a talented player, a star player, who not only has these injury concerns, but there were some things kind of hanging over the head of the organization when he left the Cardinals that people alluded to but didn't really say, whether he's a good teammate or leader or those things. So all of those things kind of paint a picture of someone who is really talented, maybe even elite, but of a bit of an enigma based on how he interacts with the squad and the like. That's just public perception of who he is based on, look, the contract that he signed with the Cardinals and them sliding in a poison pill about video game participation and homework participation and all those other things. It has just given us kind of a bad feel for what Kyler Murray is in terms of being the leader, in terms of being the guy that is a preparation fanatic and those things. Well, now you have these two players in Minnesota vying for the QB1 spot. The QB1 spot where Kevin O'Connell, let's be real, he rused the day that Sam Darnold got away. And even though it didn't end well for Sam Darnold in Minneapolis with the Vikings, the last two games were the worst that he had of the season, there's probably some romanticizing about Sam Darnold that has taken place. I'm here to tell you this competition between Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy, if we're basing it on talent, it is clearly going to Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, by some, is the best high school player to ever play football in the state of Texas. You think about some of the great high school players that played in that state for a bunch of guys who've seen a lot of ball to say that Kyler Murray is maybe the best high school player that ever played. That speaks to his talent and how he can take over a game. We talked about the two-sport thing, Oakland A's first-round pick, Arizona Cardinals first-round pick, first person to ever do that, to be respected like that, to be drafted like that. You love that. And then you hear people talk about the drop-off and the drop-off of his game. He didn't finish well with the Arizona Cardinals and those things. And I'll say this. I don't know how great everything was around him. I don't know how great the coaching staff was. And I know that there's an expectation and maybe mythology about how the quarterback is supposed to elevate the play of everyone around him. Yeah, but it takes two to tango, and he can fix some things. He can't fix all the things. And while Kyler Murray deserves his fair share of the blame in terms of the drop-off in play, the way that he performed, bouncing back from the ACL injury, being very cautious, not being the same guy, yeah, there's some things that you don't like. But what I do like is the talent is real. The talent is elite. He's worthy of being the number one pick in the draft when he came out. And if he hits the streets, there are going to be people lined up to sign him. That's just what it is, given what he's shown throughout his time. And JJ McCarthy, you may not get that same sense or that same feeling because some of the things that we've seen happen since he's been interviewed, he's pouted a little bit. He kind of comes off a certain way as opposed to just being a fighter. Hey, I'm going to do what's best for the team, but I'm fighting to get my spot back. He doesn't really seem like he has that or he hasn't really embraced that, but if he embraces that, he can create more pressure on the staff to get this right when it comes to it. In the end, to me, this was Kyler Murray's job to lose as soon as he signed the deal. The only way Kevin O'Connell was going to do this was if he could get someone that could be a starter and an upgrade over what they have. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this boldly. Kyler Murray is the most talented quarterback that Kevin O'Connell has had during his time with the Vikings. He's the most explosive, the most electric, the most dynamic. He has the potential to take this offense to another level. To me, it is easy why guys like Justin Jefferson are raving about him because players never lie, man. They will tell you who has the goods, and Kyler Murray has it. When I look at some of the quotes that came out from Justin Jefferson about Kyler Murray, how could you not be excited about what could be when Kyler Murray settles in and gets all the reps and prepares? To me, this was really, really simple. Look, he said this, like, this is straight from Justin Jefferson, a perennial Pro Bowler. He said this about Kyler Murray, and I think we have to talk about it on and on and on. He says he understands the game. He understands defenses. Jefferson told KFan 100.3 the other day. He understands how to put touch on the ball just enough to where it gets to where it's got to go without making it difficult for us. He understands the game a lot more. He kind of throws the ball before you get out the break. He's a smart guy. He's a competitor. That's Justin Jefferson talking about Kyler Murray. You hear that? You already know he's feeling Kyler Murray because it changes the way that he plays, but it changes it for the better. Touch, timing, anticipation, being able to get the ball to him early, that only allows Justin Jefferson to do what he wants to do, which is make plays on the perimeter to make some of these big plays that we're accustomed to seeing from a guy that many Bleav is the best receiver in football. So when we talk about this not being a conversation and not being a battle, it's not a battle because Kyler Murray is the guy, and I expect it to turn out that way. I just need to see what Kevin O'Connell does to tweak his offense to help Murray. But in terms of talent, he's superior. And in terms of maturity, I know people will have a tough time believing this. Kyler Murray's more mature, which makes him more ready to be the QB1 in Minnesota, where their expectations that this team can make a playoff run. Well, if that is the case, Kyler Murray has to be that because we've seen him do that at a higher level than we've seen JJ McCarthy. There's still hope for JJ McCarthy in future. It just might not be with the Minnesota Vikings. Let's kind of venture over the other way. Let's go and talk about the race that is going on, or the battle that's going on in Cleveland, Ohio, between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to raise my hand. I didn't really think this was going to be a competition. I felt like Deshaun Watson was going to have the inside track on the combination just based on what he's done and how Todd Monken views the position. Todd Monken has done a great job. Look, he helped Lamar Jackson earn his second MVP with some of the offensive creations that they did in Baltimore to really take advantage of his skills as a dual threat playmaker. Even though Deshaun Watson is not what Lamar Jackson is, or even at his best, he never will be the explosive, dynamic athlete that Lamar Jackson has proven to be. Deshaun Watson was a pretty good player that could operate on the script or off the script. He could make plays with his legs and his arm, and it was very, very easy for him to kind of lead a group, whether they were the most talented group or just a group of just average guys, to have success. He did it in Houston. When you go back and you look at what he was able to do in Houston, I mean, you're talking about someone who was a 3-time Pro Bowler, a guy who lit it up, had 2 4,000-yard seasons. He had 67.8% completion rate, had 104 touchdowns, 36 interceptions. Most importantly, he averaged 8.3 yards per attempt. So you're talking about someone that was pushing the ball down the field, that was attacking defense down the field, that was making them pay for coming up and trying to defend the running game. Why wouldn't you like that if you're Todd Monken? And even though people are talking about the trash that we saw from him during his time at Cleveland, where he only completed 61% of his passes, had 19 touchdowns, only 12 interceptions, and an 80.7 passer rating, and averaged just 5.8 yards per attempt under Kevin Stefanski, I think if you're Todd Monken, you're willing to throw it away. I mean, we're talking about like a 2.5 yard per attempt average difference between what he did in Houston under Bill O'Brien and what he was doing under Kevin Stefanski. I think Todd Monken is more willing to lean into that guy that first showed up reappearing because he feels like he has an offense that will allow him to do it. Now, that is looking very kind of at the bright side of the situation, considering that Deshaun Watson has only played in 19 games in Cleveland. He missed 11 games with suspension. He's had various injuries, throwing shoulder, Achilles, that have kept him out of the lineup. And so we're wishing upon a star a little bit, saying that he's going to be back to the player that dominated way, way back for Houston. That's it, though. Once you show it, and once you have a coach that believes in your talent, you can find that middle ground that will allow you to play at a high level. I think that Todd Monken certainly can do that, and he's talked about doing it because I watched what he did with Lamar Jackson, because you got to remember, Lamar Jackson averaged over 8 yards a pass under Todd Monken because they were pushing the ball down the field. And even though the running game was still a big part of what they did, they took more shots down the field. They made you defend every blade of grass, and that's how Todd Monken wants to play. Deshaun Watson certainly fits that. But what I didn't know is how well Shedeur Sanders would fit that. And I knew that Todd Monken would give Shedeur Sanders a legitimate shot. He tried to recruit him when he was at Georgia. He has a liking. He likes Shedeur Sanders' game and demeanor. Like, this is all positive when it comes to Todd Monken talking about Sanders. Sanders is a 5th-round pick, had a chance to start some games last year. Look, he was 3-4. He only completed 56% of his passes, had 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a 68.1 passer rating. Not great, but for a guy that is kind of playing in an offense where you don't really get the sense that the play caller or the head coach was really rocking with him, you live and you learn and you go. What I've been really impressed with in terms of hearing people talk about him over the course of the offseason, one, it's very easy to spot someone that's a worker bee. He has been working, and I know sometimes the cameras are on all the time, but there is no denying the work that he's put in. There's also no denying the way that his teammates gravitates towards him when he's able to do it. And even though, like, people Got really excited because they made a lot of noise about him receiving over $17 million from various things related to his licensing with the NFL. I think he goes beyond just kind of being a phenomenon. This is a good player. This is a guy who has some stuff, and I think Jeff Monken certainly has the scheme to bring it out. When I watched him in Colorado, I like the way they put the ball within the strike zone with touch, timing, and anticipation. I think you saw some of those things at times last year during his rookie season. And even though it wasn't perfect, man, when he was in the muck without a lot of support around him, he found a way to not only bring the energy and the juice to the Browns, but he found a way to move the ball with a team that had been hamstrung with more weapons around him. Who's to say that Shedeur Sanders can't be the guy that some of us envisioned when there was conversation about him and Cam Ward for most of the fall of their final seasons? Shedeur Sanders has just put himself not quite in the driver's seat, but just in the hip pocket where if Deshaun Watson slips at all, Shedeur Sanders can win the job. That's all you can ask if you're a young player trying to get it. You're just trying to put yourself in a position that if it goes awry, I can be the one that takes over. I step in, and if I step in, I'm never giving it up. Sanders has talked about that. He's been very confident about his thing without being adversarial. He believes that he can be a starter and a franchise quarterback in this league. He has one guy standing in the way, and that is Deshaun Watson. Now, I'm going to say this because as we begin to handicap which guy is going to actually win the quarterback battle, to me, unless Deshaun Watson gets hurt in training camp, I think this has to be one where he kind of starts it off. It's a no-risk venture. You've already paid out all the money. This is about kind of best player to give your team the best opportunity to win games. Given the experience and the high of the highs, I lean towards Deshaun Watson being able to do it. Even though some of the bloom has seemingly come off the rose, given the way that Andrew Berry and others are talking about Shedeur Sanders, I still believe that Deshaun Watson is on the inside track to get the job. I believe he'll be the week one starter. And I think he's going to get every opportunity to show people that he can play and play at a high level in this league. What he does with it, we have to wait and see. But to me, it's easy. Hand the ball to Deshaun Watson. Let him be your starting quarterback until he proves that he can't. Then give Shedeur Sanders a chance. And then the way that the season plays out could determine how they attack the draft in the offseason. Regardless, this is a pretty good battle, an even better battle than many of us expected. And I think if you're the Cleveland Browns, Todd Monken, Andrew Berry, you feel great about that because competition ultimately brings out the best in everybody. Now let's go to the Atlanta Falcons, and let's talk about this because it's funny. This one hasn't been talked about a ton, but there's a lot of intrigue. And the reason why he hasn't gotten a lot of conversation on the national scope is because Michael Penix has been hurt towards ACL last year. We anticipate him coming back sometime during training camp before the preseason and regular season start, but we just don't know. And so because of that, you can't really get into the quarterback competition despite the intrigue. And Michael Penix, you have someone who had completed sub 60% of his passes. He had 2,700 pass yards and a 12-6 touchdown to interception ratio for a respectable 85.8 passer rating. But durability is a concern. You talk about someone who's been oft injured throughout his time in college, and now that bug has followed him to the pros. You just don't know if he's going to be able to show up each and every week. Coming off this ACL, he's a few ACL injuries. Will he ever be the same? He tend to operate it from the pocket, didn't use movement as a superpower, but now more than ever, he has to be on his game in terms of understanding where to go with the ball and getting the ball out accurately and on time. Michael Penix can work on that right now where he's rehabbing. He can work on, hey, how do I break down the coverage? Where do I want to go? Where are the weak spots? So I can anticipate some of those things quicker. So then when my physical ability is ready to go, when I'm physically able to go with my knee and such, I can operate faster and play faster because my body will eventually catch up to my mind. If that happens, man, he can explode as a player. In spite of all the good feelings about Michael Penix, to me, this is Tua Tagovailoa's job to lose. Kevin Stefanski was very intentional when he talked about Tua Tagovailoa. He talked about just the God-given tools that Tua Tagovailoa has when he steps onto the field. Big-time arm talent, precise passer, paints the strike zone over and over and over again. In fact, Atlanta fans should think about him being a bit of a Greg Maddux type NFL player in terms of the way that he is very consistent with the placement and the location. When he's protected and on, I don't know if there's a better guy that can execute what I call RPOs and at the line of scrimmage passes in Tua Tagovailoa. His quick rhythm passing game, the way that he gets the ball out of his hands, it really reminds me of playing blackjack in Vegas, where the dealer is just spitting it out and everything is going. There's a rhythm, there's a feel, there's a flow to it, and your offense benefits from that, meaning your offense is the beneficiary from a quarterback that is able to play quickly and decisively like that, because it leads to more efficiency all over. Tua has proven that. And accuracy, this is not me saying it, but this is Kevin Stefanski saying, accuracy is the number one trait of the quarterbacks that they like. You have to be accurate. You got to be able to place it in the strike zone over and over and over again. And that's one of the things that Tua Tagovailoa has been able to do traditionally throughout his career. Going back, and I thought this stat blew my mind away, but since 2021, Tua Tagovailoa, his 68.6% completion rate only rates behind Joe Burrow. Like, think about that. Of all the quarterbacks that have thrown passes since 2021, who've been in 60 games, Joe Burrow is the only one who's been a more accurate and efficient passer than Tua Tagovailoa, based on that number, 68.6% completion rate. Coming off a year that everyone would say was a poor year for him in 2025, where he had 20 touchdowns and 15 interceptions and was benched for the last 3 games. So to think about that kind of production and where he's played, I'm not saying that Tua is elite, but Tua has shown flashes of being able to touch on elite runs or elite streaks, or showing signs of being a really, really good player that maybe can occasionally bump up to that elite tag. He's done that. Quick rhythm passer, pinpoint, RPOs, balls on time, on target. He gets it out. He can play fast in that dome because he knows it. He's had success there. This is, to me, Kevin Stefanski's dream type quarterback. Maybe he's undersized, but Kevin Stefanski is fine with that. He doesn't have these measurables. But someone that is a dealer, someone that just is a flamethrower from the pocket. The ball consistently hits the guy in the chest. You don't have a lot of drops because it's a very catchable ball, but you attack the defense's biggest weaknesses because your quarterback can see it, process it, and deliver. Tua has done that for most of his career. Now, Kevin Stefanski have to tweak his system because I think he is better off play action. I think he is better in the gun off flash action and those things. Yeah, you can use some traditional drop back stuff, but this is one where you don't punish the defense for coming up and really over-respecting Bijan Robinson, because if you put too much attention on Bijan Robinson, the guys on the outside are going to wear you out. Drake London just signed his big deal. They have other playmakers on the outside that can get it. Kyle Pitts is there. To me, this is Tua Tagovailoa being dropped into an offense that is ready to go. We always are talking about who are the teams that were out of the mix that can be back in the mix. The Atlanta Falcons can be back in the mix, not because Michael Penix, their franchise quarterback, is leading the charge, but because Tua Tagovailoa comes over to help them get to the postseason. Now, you don't have to believe me. You can look at FanDuel Sportsbook, because when I think about the Atlanta Falcons going to the playoffs right now on FanDuel, it's plus 220 for the Atlanta Falcons to make the playoffs. I think this team is a playoff team. They got to figure out how to pick it up on defense. But look, you kept the coordinator. Everything should be the same. It's about getting this offense up to speed. And given what we've seen Kevin Stefanski do, because remember, 2-time NFL Coach of the Year. We saw him do it successfully a few different ways. He's shown that he can get a quarterback up and going. I think Tua Tagovailoa gets up and going. I think they find a way to have a lot of success. And if Tua has a lot of success, the Falcons are going to the playoffs. More importantly, they didn't have to make a decision on whether Tua Tagovailoa is their franchise quarterback going forward. How you play will dictate that. So we're going to have our eyes on Tua Tagovailoa to see if he can be the guy to lead the Falcons out of the doldrums. Until next time, I am Bucky Brooks. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Remember to tell a friend to tell a friend. Let's grow this thing, because we're throwing all our efforts into making sure that this is the best pod, the best video show that we can do it. So make sure, drop a comment. Tell us how we can get better. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Regardless, we're going to take all the feedback and use it to build up a better product in the near future. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks, and I'm out.